These are two 30.5mm filters. The one on the left is from my DJI drone, Phantom 3, and the one on the right is from a 600mm mirror lens, back from the back of in the 80s when they were quite popular. The purpose of this video is really to demonstrate the performance of the two glasses. The one on the left is obviously made in China and is a very thin piece of glass. It's so thin actually it's pretty less than a millimetre thick. You can't see it very clearly. You just see there it's a very thin piece of supposedly optical glass. And the Sigma is a similar sort of thickness, but it's not so easy to see. And the only difference between the two is that the one on the left is obviously made in China and is coated, and the one on the right is probably made in Japan. Yep, and is uncoated lens. So, in theory, for optical performance, the best performance in light throughput will be the coated lens. But I also want to show you something else. I've been quite interested in trying to get the best optical performance out of my Phantom 3 due to the limitations of its obviously its sensor. It's a very small sensor and its high magnification. So what the plan is to do is to demonstrate how good the glass is being ground, really. These cheap Chinese filters, I've come across a few of them in the past, and they're pretty awful actually for optical performance. And a bit of a story, a friend at work bought a second-hand Pentax lens on eBay for £300 or £400. It was an expensive lens. He was very pleased with it. He thought he got a bargain, and he obviously started taking photographs with it, and soon found out that it was not quite what he was expecting. When he was taking the photographs, he found the image quality was not as good as he thought, and he was noticing a sort of distortion in the bottom hand of the corner of the lens. So what he did was he went and sent it off to Pentax for them to do a recal on it, and they had it for a couple of weeks, charged him sort of 150 quid, said they couldn't find anything wrong, and anyway he got it back and he said, oh yes, it's been fixed. For a couple of months later he mentioned to me he was going to sell it because he said the distortion's come back again. I said, well, it can't come back again, you know, unless you've dropped it or it's out of a line. It's either there or it isn't. So what happened after that was I said, well, bring the lens in and we'll have a look at it so you can see anything obviously wrong inside the lens. So we took the lens apart, or took the the filter off and had a look inside the lens. It all looked nice and clean, and there wasn't a problem there. So so I said, well, let's have a look at the filter. So I took the filter off, and it was a Jessup filter, and removed the filter and held it out at arm's length. And initially it looked fine, but when you twisted it and rotated it, you could see quite a noticeable distortion in the corner of the filter. So I said, well, I think it's your filter's faulty. And then there was this pause, and he was thinking. I could tell what he was thinking, and he said, oh, I didn't think of that. When I first got the lens back, I didn't have the filter on it, and I just automatically put the filter back on and didn't even expect it to make any difference to the performance. So I said, well, I suggest you go home and try it without the filter. So he did exactly that and said, yep, that's all it was. So what it boiled down to is he sent this lens back to be repaired by Pentax, and there was actually nothing wrong with the lens at all, and it was the cheap or poor QA on the filter. So this is the story. What I'm trying to do is see if I can get a little bit more optical performance out of the camera. I've adjusted the lens already on the DJI, and I've got an improvement on the sharpness because the focal point was beyond infinity, so everything was sort of mushy. Managed to improve that slightly. That was quite pleased with that, and I was setting that up by removing the filter on the front, turning the lens, and then sort of keep taking photographs in RAW to get the best sharpness possible. But then I thought, well, I wonder what the optical performance of the actual filter is, because we've had this problem before. And this is what I'm going to try and demonstrate to you now. I'm going to hold the filter up in front of the camera. Now it's going to be a bit of fiddling to get the best result. I'm going to move the filter in front of the camera. Now can you see the distortion the filter is producing? I'm trying to find the best point where it makes the worst situation. Now, that's the edge of the filter. You see the distortion on the edge of the house and the beech tree. You see the way it's all just moving the image about. Now, I'm trying to get you can see. There we go. That's either side of my fingers, so you can see the distortion to the edge of the frame is quite noticeable, and that's pretty poor actually. Let's try and bring it right up to this edge. That's right to the centre of the front of the lens. That's the edge, and that's the edge. You can see the distortion roll off. Now, this is the Sigma lens. I'm going to hold that front up. It'll be easier on Sigma lens because you've got the line you can see. But look at the distortion on this one. There isn't any. Or if there is, it's absolutely minute. So, anyone who's got these DJI cameras and they're critical on its optical performance, which I am. I mean, I take a lot of my photographs with the SLR, and I sort of always expect SLR quality. It's just a thought that maybe replacing these filters with something a little bit better would be a good way forward. Now, this is, as I say, it's a 30.5mm filter. Now, unfortunately, the way the DJI lens mounts is it mounts onto this inner ring here, whereas the filter mounts onto like the male thread on the filter, as a conventional camera does, obviously. Now, what you could do, you'd have to make an extension, but mount the lens on backwards. And I've tried doing that to the camera, but the trouble is the lens and the plastic bezel that's in front of the lens on the actual camera itself needs to be deep in that before the thread will start. So I'd have to make up an adapter. Now, I'm sort of vaguely thinking about trying to get this lip turned off this filter here, because I get the lip turned off and I can screw that to there and then screw that back onto the camera, and I've got a removable filter of high quality. The other option is to possibly try and get the glass out of the Sigma lens or filter surround, get the glass out of here and pop it into the DJI mount, because the DJI mount it's quite an easy replaceable piece of glass. You just drop it in. So if you can find a piece of optical glass that was that diameter, which is about 30.5, 31 millimeters, drop that in, and then you're away. You've got a decent optical performing filter, hopefully, to mount on the DJI. Now, the problem is they don't do filters. It looks like about 31 millimeter piece of glass. I will measure it and put a link down below, but the glass looks like 31 millimeters diameter. I'll measure it with a vernier. If we can find something like that, then we can possibly replace this pretty poor optical performing piece of glass and hopefully get a bit more performance out of the DJI camera. Anyway, thanks for watching. I hope it's of interest. Leave any feedback that you think, if you've got any comments or anything like that, and hopefully some more to come.